किताब महज एक हादसे की कहानी नहीं है, बल्कि एक इंसान की अंदरूनी ताकत, हौसला और मकसद की तलाश का सफ़र है। और जीने वाले ज़िंदगी हर रोज़ एक नया वादा लेके जीते हैं। सो टुडे इज़ नॉट जस्ट अ सेलिब्रेशन ऑफ अ बुक, it's a celebration of human spirit. Seat 1C offers a deeply and courageous narrative of resilience, humility, and transformation, especially in the aftermath of PK 8303 tragedy. It is a story that speaks an unshakable spirit of hope. So with that, I would like to thank, and we are deeply honored to have with us is the author himself, Zafar Masud Sahab. Along with us is Dr. Ali Shima, Vice Chancellor, Shahid Hussain Sahab, Rector LUMS, distinguished guests, alumni, students, and industry professionals. Welcome you all. To formally welcome and open the occasion, I request Dr. Ali Shima to come here and say a few words. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Atif. I wanted to thank the SB Alumni Association for organizing this talk because he has such a close association with us. So it's amazing to have him here and talk about this book and this amazing journey. I met Zafar Sahab, 3 years ago? I'd heard a lot about him. We never had the opportunity to meet. But when I met him, we met after this incident had happened, it was like meeting somebody I've known all my life. We connected. He'd come to recruit me on some sort of economic planning mission, which I won't bore you with. But when I saw him, what occurred to my mind was that, here was a remarkable moment of experiencing or witnessing understated courage. Somebody who had gone through this, but he had an incredible resilience, a forward-looking approach, and there was nothing in our interaction that would have led me to believe that you had gone through this experience. And, in terms of the ideas that you put forward at that meeting were quite inspiring. You've carried sort of that dynamism through your journey at both OGDCL and the Bank of Punjab. Particularly in both these organizations, you see 2 or 3 fairly remarkable transformations happening. I remember sort of being asked to, I was nominated to become part of the board of directors of the Bank of Punjab in 2009. And it was a very different story, you see. But now you have this bank which is going into sectors like agriculture, around climate. You have OGDCL, which is not only talking about sort of what to do in that particular sector, but also how do you infuse R&D, and it's connecting with universities, and that's part of a very dynamic outlook. The last thing that I experienced with Zafar Saab is that he is a polymath. Economists are snobbish people. There's a great quote from general theory. When we see a banker or an accountant holding forth on the economy, I'm always reminded by this quote from Keynes where he said, practical men who believe themselves to be quite exempt from any intellectual influence are usually the slaves of some defunct economist, you see. So that's the typical reaction of an economist. But in that one meeting, I saw somebody who had great insights, not only as a professional in banking, but also towards the economy, towards thinking about deep structural problems, the ability to frame it, but also somebody who had a great passion for arts, for writing. We discussed all of that in about an hour. And that's really, the definition of a polymath. That is something that is very, very special. You're going to hear from this remarkable book, which I had the opportunity to read. And one passage particularly resonated with me, the book itself is very inspiring. It's in the introduction where he says that the process of coming to terms with my mortality and my newfound physical limitations was both isolating and incredibly humbling in equal measure. On the one hand, I was alone in my predicament, and on the other, I was paradoxically awash with an outpouring of love and support that left me reeling with gratitude and awe. I finally understood what it meant to feel alone in a crowd, and it was disorienting. But how do you come out of this being this dynamic personality is something we can all learn from and take inspiration from, particularly our younger students who are here. So I look forward to this conversation with old friends like Nofal Daud, who was part of the first MBA class that I taught at the university, and always gave me a tremendously tough time when I was teaching him through the case method. So Zafar Saab, over to Nofal and you. Thank you.
Book launching event of Seat 1C at LUMS today. My name is Nofal. I'm a LUMS alumni and as well as the Chief Digital Officer for the Bank of Punjab. And I will be your moderator this afternoon. For many of you, Zafar Saab is very well-known commodity. In fact, if I may hazard a guess, I'm pretty sure that most of you would have already known him personally or professionally or within 6 degrees of separation, as they say. For the third category, Zafar Saab is the President and CEO of Bank of Punjab. He is also the Chairman of OGDCL, as well as the Chairman of the Pakistan Banks Association. He is one of the only 2 survivors of PIA flight PK8303, which unfortunately crashed in Karachi about 5 years ago. I'm reasonably confident that the mention of PK8303 would bring succinct, distinct memories amongst all of us, remembering where we were at that point in time. I, as a colleague of Zafar Saab at that time, and a few of my colleagues also are sitting here in the audience, had just started to know him because he had joined the bank literally a few days ago, if not a few months ago. And the journey of the last 5+ years, and I think it's now your 6th year into the presidency of Bank of Punjab, it has been an honor and a privilege to have known him as a colleague and, may I dare say, as a friend. So thank you very much, Zafar Saab, for taking the time out. We are, of course, on a time schedule here. I've been told that we have 45 minutes, slightly up and down can happen. And we will endeavor to engage in a meaningful conversation with Zafar Saab. And what we will try to unwrap and unravel are a few aspects of the book that he has written. Obviously, we will be very interested in the book itself, but needless to say, the author cannot go scot-free if we're talking about the book. So that's where we will be also asking him a few questions. Then we can also not divulge the event of the tragedy itself, because in all our minds as humans, that is etched into a memory, and for a very morbid reason, if I may dare say, the raison d'etre of the book is the event. So that's where we should be talking about. We will also talk about the family, the early life of Zafar Saab, so as to give you a full measure of the author. But before I start, Zafar Saab, may I confess in front of this audience that personally, it's been a privilege of having to have known you. And one of my most cherished possessions that I do possess today is the book that's right on the table, and more particularly, which you have given to me personally, and more particularly the remarks that you have penned. And I've kept that away from everyone, but to my privilege and honor, I cherish what you've written. So thank you very much, Zafar Saab. So that's one personal tick box that I wanted to do. We will also be taking questions. The session will be interspersed with a few readings that Zafar Saab would do. So all in all, this will be a kind of inquisitive session with a few questions from the audience. So do you have any questions? Be prepared with that. Inshallah, you'll get the time. So Zafar Saab, if I may start with my first question. The title of your book, I'm fascinated by. The words Seat 1C and Survivor immediately takes us to the tragedy of the Flight 8303 crash. But at the same time, the survivor is also looking into a bright future full of hope, resilience, and renewal. The three words that you have appended in the title of your book. I am reminded by this yin yang of a tragedy that occurred in the past and a bright future, the narrative that you're trying to build in your book. Do you agree with this hypothesis?
Well, yes, Nofal, before I delve into responding to your question, I would like to make a few acknowledgements. One is the fact that I'm extremely thankful to Atif and the SDSP Alumni Association for organizing this. It's always a pleasure and honor to come back to LUMS. I am also extremely honored and humbled by giving the title of an honorary alumni of LUMS. If I were that great a student, I would have probably done my MBA from here, but I wasn't, so I ended up in IBA. But you know, the words that Dr. Ali Shima has used about me, I don't deserve all of those. Dr. Saab, you've been very kind and very generous with your acknowledgements, and you know, I'm really honored. Thank you very much. So coming to your question, Nofal, you know, it's the title is a kind of a misnomer. The people who've read the book, and you know, Dr. Ali Shima will agree with me. In fact, my mentor, my elder, Dr. Amjad Saqib is here. He's translating this book into Urdu. So,
If you allow me, I will
Zarur.
one paragraph.
Zarur, please. Okay. So Dr. Amjad Saqib is translating this in Urdu. तो मेरे लिए तो एक बहुत बड़ा ऑनर ये है कि एक तो खैर उर्दू में बोल रही है, मगर डॉक्टर अमजद साकिब उसको उर्दू में कर रहे हैं, तो दैट्स अ बिग ऑनर फॉर मी. थैंक यू वेरी मच सर. सो जिन्होंने ये किताब पढ़ी है उनको अच्छी तरह अंदाज़ा होगा कि the title per se is a misnomer. There is not much discussion about the accident in there. It's only in some places here and there where it was absolutely necessary. And I've avoided the complete drama and sensationalization of the whole episode in this writing. It's solely focused towards the learnings from as a result of this experience. Look, Nofal, there are two routes that one could take as a consequence of this kind of tragedy, or an exposure or accident or whatever you want to call it. I took the route of a glass half full, because I believe that we need to always look things positively. Now that's also is a result of my orientation and upbringing and circumstances. I grew up in, there are many people sitting here, Salim Saab is here, जिनके सामने मैं सबके सामने बड़ा हूँ. ये एक पूरा ecosystem का, and it's the support system because of which you get that strength to bounce back and to respond to any adversity that comes your way. Whether you are operating in a high context environment or you're operating in a low context environment, as you know, as Meyer has put her in her book, we have to, we still, it's the support system, ecosystem that gives you that strength and support. I was very lucky to have grown up with a support system where there was positivity in the air, and I took the route of taking this head on and addressing these things from a yin-yang's whiter side of the equation than the black side of the equation. There are no binaries in life. There are human relationships. There are the societies. There are institutions. They're all interlinked and they're connected together. And if we try and operate in isolation or try and find the binary relationship, I guess it's slightly harsh. And I have tried to avoid that in this whole discussion, in this whole book. I have kept it my entire thesis is based on the fact that if as an individual level we improve ourselves, then being part of that society overall, and then that society converts into a larger community and then into the country and the humanity, I think we will have a better world. So start from your own improvement and your own development to begin with, and then things will be very different.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question on that, because you mentioned in your response that there is not much stark reference to the event of the crash itself, and we'll hopefully find a chance to find out from you that why is such the case. But sticking to this theme, it's very interesting that the two aspects of, on the one hand, we consider death as a certainty, whereas surviving a near-death event is considered to be a miracle. And for ordinary humans, these are two ends of a continuum, two opposing ends of the continuum, depending on the probability, one of a near certain, or in fact a certain probability of death, whereas a very low probability of a miracle. But interestingly, in your book, in chapter Miracles, you write, and I quote, "It was only when I made peace with not knowing that I was able to move on." Now, it's very strange that this is a phrase that one also uses when moving on while dealing with a tragedy. Do you find it strange that you had to come to terms with the miraculous event of your own survival in a manner which is almost akin to dealing with a tragedy?
Yes, I think you've drawn a very interesting analogy. The fact is that, when the actual tragedy was happening, it was a tragedy. I wasn't aware about the miracle piece. In fact, I've written that in the book, that I was all ready to go. I was reconciled to the fact that this is all over. This is now something which is inevitable. It cannot be averted at all. So that was, at that time, perhaps it was a tragedy, and it was surely a tragedy, but the miracle only happened post-fact. So while you've drawn a very interesting analogy, but the time sequence does not allow them to be on the same page as such. So tragedy followed by miracle. I wasn't aware of the miracle then. So it was for me a tragedy, and hence the response in the book, and then subsequently turned out to be a miracle, and hence the learnings of this book.
So now we talk about something of the book, the structure and the some actual physical part of it. We all know about the 10 Commandments. We know the 7 deadly sins, or even the 40 shades of love. But interestingly, you have divided your book into 10 distinct chapters, each with a unique name. My first question is that, what would you want history to call this list as Zafar Masud's list of 10 what?
Yeah, it's a tricky one again, Noaf. And Doctor, you were right about him, actually. Yes, you see, the point is that if I were to attribute any nomenclature to these 10 musings, I would say these are the learnings of life before death, 30 seconds before your death. Now, see, the important thing is, and I've said that, I think, earlier also in one of the talks, we are aware of the life after death. We have our own faith about it. We have our own myth about the whole thing. But this is all something that is faith and myth-based. There are no people coming back telling us what has actually happened life after death. Same goes for 30 seconds before the death. You really don't know what happened at that time. The very few people in the world who have actually come back from those 30 seconds and come back and tell the tale of what happens in those 30 seconds. There are many people like it, but there are very few people. I believe I was in one of those lucky ones who have come back to tell the tale of what happens in those 30 seconds. And I have tried to, these 10 learnings are actually an outcome of those 30 seconds experience that I had, the life before death, 30 seconds. In terms of, coming out with the number as such, 10 or 12 or 8 or 9, I didn't have any number in mind at all. It's just, I was asked to write about my experiences post-crash. And it just, whatever came to my mind, I start writing about it, and it turned out to be 10, interestingly enough. So, no, there was no preconceived ideas that I have to come up with 10 or 8 or 14 or whatever. As people say कि वो 14 नुकात पाकिस्तान के थे, तो शायद मैं 14 तक तो नहीं पहुंचा, 10 पे रह गया. But nevertheless, could have been 9, could have been 11. And each one of them are important in their own right, in their own position. And I think, I try to do justification. I try to do justice with all those learnings, where they were coming from and what is expected to happen, and help in setting the priority for the readers in their own lives.
And which one amongst these 10 would be your most favorite, if I may ask?
Rituals by far.
Rituals.
Because I personally believe it's very important to put the rituals into context. In fact, let me just confess to you that, in my original manuscript, I started with ritual as the first learning. And interestingly enough, as an amateur writer, I had a completely different structure of the book in mind. But then it evolved, and it helped in putting it into a more coherent sort of script. And ritual was the first chapter then, because I believe that putting rituals into context is a very, very important aspect in our life, especially in a society like Pakistan's, where there is serious digression as far as falling of rituals are concerned, or the piece of rigidity of rituals are concerned.
Staying with the theme of rituals, almost like you've dedicated your book, and you make it very clear in your dedication that you've dedicated the book to your parents. And you made it clear that you're alive of them because of, and I quote, their goodness to people and piousness. Now, one of the chapters in your book is indeed titled Goodness, but I do not see a chapter called Piousness in it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if the book had more chapters, let's say, 14 nukat to nahi, but 12 or 13. Had there been a chapter named Piousness, or you're not a big fan?
No, it's not a matter of being a fan. I think it's a matter of putting the piousness into context too. Now, as I just earlier mentioning, rituals being the favorite chapter, we tend to mix up piousness with the rituals. And I think the piousness is in everything. The piousness is actually a same is the other side of the same coin as goodness, for that matter. So piousness should lead into goodness. If that's not happening, then the piousness doesn't mean anything. And therefore you'll see the piousness being weaved into every chapter that I have talked about. And surely, my parents are very, very pious people. Pious people, not just in terms of rituals, by the way. In their case, it's very different. Salim uncle is here, he knows. But they're very ritualistic people. But they're very good people. They're very, very good human beings. And this is, to my mind, is the definition of being pious. And that the goodness piece.
So no mathe ki mehrab requirement for being good.
यार पहले ही मुझ पे लोगों ने कहा है कि आप पे अभी फतवा आ जाएगा बहुत जल्दी जिस किस्म की चीजें आपने किताब में लिखी हैं. But if you want to say this, okay, I'll admit.
But I want the audience to understand my predicament interviewing or asking my boss questions like this in a commercial company. But please go ahead. Would there be a passage? Would you want to?
Yes, I would. While we are at it, Noaf, on the rituals only, let me just try and read something from the book. As I said, my favorite chapter. It's page. People who have the book, they would know. So, my views about rituals are.
Page.
are 148. So, if you rituals are important in life. Please don't misunderstand me. But it's the rigidity of the rituals which is a problem. So they help in, alleviating anxiety and stress and everything. But despite the unreasonableness and absurdness of these rituals, the rigidity of ritual is a killer, really. And in that context, let me just read something from the book. And then you will understand where my learnings are coming from and why rituals is one of the learnings in the whole equation. The truth is that rituals today, cloaked in the biases of the people who perform them, can be decisive, difficult, and distracting. In the slow global trudle towards radicalism, rigid ideologies such as Salafi Islam or Puritan Christianity have used rituals to ascertain who follows the correct version of the religion. This follows from the social identity theories outlined in this book above. If rituals are used to create identities, those identities can become exclusive and discerning. Those who do not perform these rigid rituals correctly can find themselves excluded from these communities, with rituals dividing people instead of bringing them together. Rigid adherence to rituals cannot come at the cost of everything else. I am not suggesting that people give up on religious duties. I am not suggesting that people give up on the religious duties, but how would the lives of passengers of flight 8303 be different if the ground control at Karachi airport had taken turns to pray on that Friday instead of abandoning their posts in droves? This rigidity that surrounds ritual worship in Pakistan did not develop in a vacuum. I have witnessed Pakistan change from a relatively open-minded society to one that is increasingly becoming regressive and dictatorial. And complex socio-economic and political triggers have underpinned it all. I would like to recount the downward spiral Pakistan has found itself in, with a deteriorating security situation, rising intolerance, and investors scared off by political volatility. Because all of this has led to a more conservative society. Thank you.
So, changing gears, why did you write this book? I mean, you are arguably one of the most well-known, recognized person in the country with a rapidly growing international stature. Did you write this book to get even more famous and rich, if I may add as well?
So, Noaf, your first part of the question has gotten you the excellent rating in your half-year appraisal for sure. But second half has actually taken that back. So the whole process of writing the book was, I loved it, by the way. I loved the whole, the experience. And by the way, I'm liking the reading of this book even more. It's such a great learning, I can't begin to tell you. In the process of writing the book, I had to read a lot of books. But in the process of reading this book, I have to read even more books than I read through the writing process. And it itself was a very refreshing, very good experience, I must say. But I believe that, this writing, this book was something which I owed to my people, to my community, to my country, to the society in general, to the humanity in general, because these are those experiences which are unique in nature. And because of this, I believe that, I have to write a book. I have to leave something permanent behind in this, in this temporary world. And this is the reason why I've written this book, really.
Did you enjoy the process of writing?
I loved it. I really loved it. And as I said, even reading the book and these book launches, as they call it, I'm loving it.
But can you say the same about Amna also, who's helped you on the book?
I-
Amna, by the way, as Zafar Sahib
Is
would
the
explain.
editor and researcher, yes. Yeah, the smirk I noticed on your face, Nofal. I know you can relate to Amna's agony for working with me, which you guys all go through. Nadeem Saab is also here. So no, Amna actually, yes. Amna, you can ask this question to Amna. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today. But I think we had a very good working relationship. Amna and myself are now working on 2 more books. So one is on the financial inclusion and the peace, and the other one is literature and economy, which Dr. Saab I talked to you about earlier as well. So we are now in the process of, once Dr. Saab is now working on the Urdu translation. There's another gentleman who's doing the translation in Spanish. And that is happening. Bobby Saab is here. He's also offered to assist on the Chinese translation. So I guess I'll be quite occupied before the second book comes through. But Amna has been engaged. Amna and myself are working on that project as well.
Staying, and you've explained the rationale why you wrote the book. But what I also noticed that your book list contains about 160 citations, including some overlaps, 172 in total, if we include the chapters Flight 8303 and afterwards. And citations include news items, books on history, poetry, psychology, art, and many more. Now, it almost feels like it's so well researched, like an academic endeavor rather than an emotional telltale story of an event in which all humans will be naturally interested. What made you take the decision of taking the route of a well-researched book rather than a emotional drama?
Yeah, so I am that guy. I am a research-oriented guy. I am obsessed with the research. I'm actually more obsessed with the primary research than the secondary research, to be honest with you. And since I've written this book for myself, I wanted to come out with the project where I would come out with the book which I want to read. I want to read a book which is well researched. I want to read a book which is well worded, which is flowing nicely, which has some learnings, which has a story. And all of that I have tried and captured in this book. And hence the whole, मुझे अभी ख्याल आया, ये जो आपने सवाल अभी पूछा था मुझसे research वाला, डॉक्टर साहब I always wanted to do a PhD, but ना मेरे academic credentials इतने strong थे आप लोगों जैसे, और ना मेरे अंदर उसके लिए जिस किस्म का resolve चाहिए ना और commitment चाहिए, that is not easy either. तो वो perhaps that is something which is reflecting in this book as well, through the research. So I guess this is where this whole research piece is coming from, really, in the book.
Okay, thank you.
It's really a labor of love as far as I am concerned. Really, this is something that I really want to do. If I was doing my PhD, then probably this is the kind of thesis I would have come through with.
So in one of the responses that you've written this book for you, but you've also mentioned that this is a testament of your musings, your thoughts in a more permanent fashion, kind of a legacy. But fundamentally, whom have you written this book for?
So frankly, Nofal, I have written it for myself. And why myself? Acha, ye badi interesting story. Why myself? Because right after the crash, I've been realized, and every day I've been made to realize that, I am a chosen one. I am a peer of the sorts. So thank God to my parents and my friends who keep me, and my colleagues like him, by the way, who are very helpful in keeping my feet on the ground. But this book is something very important for me because keep on writing this. Shahid Sahab, aap jo keh rahe the, one of the helpful things is that every time I have to read this through, अच्छा हर दफ़ा जब रीड करनी होती है ना तो एक रात पहले मुझे पूरी तकरीबन किताब पढ़नी पड़ती है because I don't want overlap. People who attended my talk at Alhambra in Lahore, they would know that today what I'm talking about is not something, or reading from this book which I did not read from at Alhambra. Though this has become a kind of a Bible for me, in the sense that it keeps on reminding me what is important in life. अच्छा, और अगर आप एक बैंक के प्रेसिडेंट हैं, एक कंपनी के ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के चेयरमैन हैं और एक एसोसिएशन के चेयरमैन हैं, बड़ी इन्फ्लुएंशियल एसोसिएशन, तो वैसे ही आपको यकीन दिला दिया जाता है कि यूँ तो बस आप अल्लाह ताला का अवतार हैं, विदाउट इवन यू रियलाइजिंग कि यार ये तो चीज़ें बड़ी टेम्प्रेरी हैं, आज हैं कल ख़त्म हो जाएंगी, परसों चली जाएंगी. ये तो बड़ी बेवफा चीज़ें होती हैं, that doesn't stay with you. The important thing that stays with you is the fact that when you were in that position, what did you do? The impact that you created. And this is what is more important. And this book is all about it. This book is all about realizing that, you know, if you are a privileged one, then you need to owe more to the society than otherwise anybody else. And this is something.
So you say that this is...
But primarily, to tell you the truth, I want to talk to students about it more and more. Because उनका जिस phase of life में वो हैं, the formidable years that they are going through, perhaps they needed to be told these stories more, shared these learnings more than anyone else. But then, no gender, no age. Learning is an ongoing process. Anybody can you should change yourself with the changing circumstances.
So you talk about students, and obviously what more befitting setting than a university auditorium in talking about students. When I recall, I was a student, and when I used to read books, especially fiction, one of the pleasures that I would get reading fiction was that I would always imagine myself to be the protagonist of the book. Be it a hero in a tragic story or whatever. Do you believe that, although it's not a work of fiction very clearly by definition, but your book also offers the same opportunity to the reader to place herself in your shoes while going through this, you know, tale of tragedy and hope? Is this something that you think is possible? What if I were in Zafar Masud's shoes?
Achha, interestingly enough, although it's not fiction, by the way.
It's not, obviously.
It's not fiction, but it is fictional in many ways, because my life is a kind of a fiction. Surviving an air crash, how many people experienced that kind of thing? Passenger plane where 100 people perished. So it is certainly I'm leading a dream life. I'm leading a life which is a privileged one. I'm leading a life which is fictional in many ways, but I try to make sure that, you know, I keep the fiction part to the minimal, and I talk about non-fictional piece more. Now, in this particular setting, one thing I would like to, highlight and say is the fact that, you know, where I'm standing today, actually in a way, all my dreams are coming true. I'm doing well and professionally. I've been well recognized for my contributions as far as the book is concerned. I have been given the second life by my God. I have a most loving family and friends. But all of them is coming with the cost. And that cost is a responsibility, more so responsibility than the cost. And the responsibility is that I have to give back. I have to give more than anybody else. And that's a big, big responsibility, whether it's fictional or non-fictional. The fact of the matter is the life that I am leading is something where, you know, I personally believe that I am not giving enough. I perhaps need to do more. And this itself is a very interesting syndrome. There is a concept called survivor's guilt. मैंने उसमें किताब में उसका काफ़ी डिटेल में जिक्र भी किया है. And again, you could have taken two routes to it. You could have bogged down with the survivor's guilt, or you could have taken a positive route of it and start. The positive route तो आपने ले लिया है, but the positive route के साथ जिस किस्म की responsibility और आपके ज़हन. So I'm going through a psychotherapy sessions these days, Falhat, because I really needed it. किताब के बाद मुझे ज़्यादा ज़रूरत पड़ गई है उसकी. किताब से पहले तो क्रैश के बाद भी था. But उसकी ज़्यादा ज़रूरत पड़ गई because every time I read the book again, Shahid Sahab, it resurrects the additional responsibility of you. It's a strange syndrome. So while, it's not fictional, it's non-fictional, surely. It's about my own story. But it's like a dream story. It's like a dream life, which comes with the responsibilities.
So this dream life that you mentioned, now let's then focus more on you, of the life that you're living, and let's for time being not talk about the author but the man, Zafar Masud. So who is Zafar Masud? The international banker, the CEO, the entrepreneur, chairman PBA. There's so many roles that you played. So which one of them have you enjoyed playing the most?
So, to be honest, and मुझे वो बहुत लोग ये हर वक्त आके कहते हैं कि जी आपको किसी पर्पस के लिए बचाया गया. I dismiss that completely. I dismiss that completely on purpose because of two reasons. One is the fact that I don't want to take that responsibility. Secondly, I don't consider myself as important कि अल्लाह ताला ने मुझे बचाया किसी बड़े काम के लिए. जो काम दिया हुआ है, I personally believe what I'm doing right now is good enough for me to do. And this is what I owe and I should continue to do. I am a simple human being, mere mortal, and I'm trying my best to deliver with the best of my abilities, and that's about it. As I said earlier, ये सारे titles जो है ना ये बड़े ephemeral होते हैं in nature. आज हैं कल नहीं होंगे, परसों नहीं होंगे. You have to still leave something behind which people remember you for, like Dr. Amjad Saqib is doing.
So, but what about the future? Maybe a larger bank, international role, governor state bank, or maybe the holy grail of them all, the finance minister. Maybe.
Noaf, I always considered you as a friend, but I guess you are not. So to be honest, none of the above. If you ask me, I'm not looking for any of these positions or roles. I'm very content and happy with what I'm doing right now, to tell you the truth. Look, इस तरह की जॉब बहुत सारे लोग मुझसे बहुत अच्छे तरीके से कर सकते हैं. And I'm telling you with the hand on my heart. And especially बैंकरों के बारे में जो इकोनॉमिस्ट का व्यू है उसके बाद तो मैं बिल्कुल ही इसके करीब भी नहीं जाऊंगा, दूर रहूंगा. But on a serious note, सच्ची बात ये कि there are many capable people who can do this. But जो मेरी musings हैं ना on my personal learnings, those are unique in nature, वो कोई और नहीं कर सकता. So let those people do what they can do, and let me do what I can do, which I owe to my community and my people. And that's the reason why I'm not interested in any of these roles. I am just doing what I'm doing right now. जिस तरह मैंने कहा, मैं तो आगे 2-3 किताबें और लाइनअप की हुई हैं. डॉक्टर साहब की भी उर्दू में आ जाएगी, फिर स्पेनिश में आ जाएगी, फिर the two more books that I'm talking about. In fact, इसकी 2 सीक्वल जो है ना वो मुझे अब लगती हैं. जिस तरह पहले वाला सवाल आपने पूछा था या दूसरा था, जिसमें वो 30 सेकंड स्टोरी वाली बात है ना, लाइफ बिफोर डेथ 30 सेकंड. लुक, द पॉइंट इज़ दैट बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग ये एक और फिनोमेना है जो मैं आप लोगों से शेयर करना चाह रहा हूँ. जो लाइफ बिफोर डेथ 30 सेकंड्स है ना, in that situation you are standing in your own court. You are accountable to your own self. जो लाइफ आफ्टर डेथ वाला पीस है ना, उसमें अकाउंटेबिलिटी इज बीइंग डन बाय द गॉड. अच्छा, गॉड तो गफूर रहीम है, वो तो छोटी मोटी चीज़ों पे आपको माफ़ कर देगा. आप खुद तो बहुत छोटे इंसान हैं ना, तो अपने आप को बड़ा कीजिए, इतना बड़ा कीजिए कि 30 सेकंड पहले लाइफ बिफोर डेथ में जब आप अपने कोर्ट में खड़े होंगे ना, तो आप अपने आप को माफ़ कर सकें और इस बात पे ना इंटेंगल हो जाए कि नौफल ने मुझसे ये सवाल गलत पकड़ लिया था और मैंने. So this is the sequel I'm looking for to write. मेरी आमना से उस दिन बात हो रही थी as sequel to this book. नौफल, यहाँ पर मैं एक अगर आप इजाज़त दें तो मैं ज़रा क्विक रीड कर लूँ from a chapters on dues, because बड़ा important है कि क्या ड्यूज़ हैं जो आपने देने हैं, जो you owe to the people. While the time between my plane's engine catching fire and the eventual crash must have spanned a few minutes, I only recall a crucial 30 seconds or so. In those 30 seconds, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that my plane was going to crash. The engine had lost power. even as I experienced the moment of clarity and deep introspection I described earlier. I do remember thinking about a somewhat trivial obligation, much like Hayam. Hayam was a Swiss geologist who experienced a fall in 1871 at Ascentias, which is the crown peak of Elf Massif in Switzerland. And he kind of experienced on those 37 exactly the same thing which I experienced. And I spoke to many people otherwise, and they tell me, the people who have had similar experiences, that they had also, had an exposure to the similar situation. As cliched as it sounds, my entire life flashed before my eyes, as if a truly prodigious artist had laid it out on a canvas with brilliant strokes. I did not have any significant regrets, but there were things I did not have any significant, but there were things I wished I had done earlier. I was reminded of Munir Niazi's poem, हमेशा देर कर देता हूँ मैं. A tragicomic ode to procrastination. हमेशा देर कर देता हूँ मैं हर काम करने में. Ben, my friend, with apologies, I'm in Urdu. There is an English translation in this, but if I go in English, trust me, it'll lose the essence. So I'm going to continue here and I'll explain it to you later. हमेशा देर कर देता हूँ मैं हर काम करने में. ज़रूरी बात कहनी हो, कोई वादा निभाना हो, उसे आवाज़ देनी हो, वापस बुलाना हो, हमेशा देर कर देता हूँ मैं. This should not be on your mind when those 30 seconds are confronted with you.
Zafar, before I move on, this is one question that I have to ask, and I lay complete responsibility of this question to my colleagues who are sitting in front. So I do not expect you to divulge the reasons of you.
Is the name of that, is this guy also a LUMS graduate?
Right now, everyone's a LUMS graduate sitting there. So I can sort of hide their identity insofar as get. So I don't expect you to divulge the reasons of being single in front of a public audience, but what was it? I mean, heartbreak, professional ambition, just didn't have the time. I mean,
so trust me, you're better off telling me revealing me the identity of the person who has fed this question to you.
oops.
Six-month review is coming up. So interestingly enough, Noaf, unlike the previous question that you asked where it was none of the above.
None of the above, yeah.
It is, in this case, is all of the above. So अगर आप शायरों के ख़ानदान से आ रहे हैं ना, तो वो हार्ट ब्रेक होना बड़ा ज़रूरी है. क्योंकि जो हार्ट ब्रेक ही नहीं होता तो वो तो अच्छा इश्क होता ही नहीं है. मेरी तो थ्योरी ये है कि इश्क हो ही नहीं. अगर इश्क जो है वो शादी में कन्वर्ट हो जाए तो वो इश्क ख़त्म हो जाता है, और अगर वो इश्क नाकाम हो जाए तो वो इश्क जिंदा रह जाता है. तो लिहाजा उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में अगर आप इसको देखेंगे तो all of the above perhaps. At some point in time it was the professional commitments, on the other it was a heartbreak. Sometimes some people I wanted to marry, they had sanity prevailed on them. Some people wanted to marry me and then sanity prevailed on me perhaps.
So we won't still find out, but it was worth a try at least. You talk about Khandan, so let's talk about your personal experience growing up. So you were born and raised in Lahore, but your professional life, and you'd settled in Karachi. In fact, you have a house and your family is there as well. So let's settle this debate to start with. Which one is better, Lahore or Lahore?
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Or Karachi?
Thanks for putting me on the spot. I think your question has the answer as well, so I really don't have to answer. No, I love Lahore. I love Karachi as well, by the way. But then I'm a wrong person to ask this question, Noaf, because I am a very adaptable, flexible guy who can even fall in love with place like Islamabad, so let alone Lahore and Karachi for that matter. So I guess, yeah, Lahore hands down. I love Lahore.
Now we've all known you for a few years, and like I was mentioning in my preamble that, you know, I've had a privilege of knowing you, and we all know, and I do know, that how deeply attached you are with your parents, and you don't talk about them directly, but the oblique references that you make about them, it makes clear to everyone around you that you are deeply in love with them. And sometimes I feel that you're still in awe of them, like a child is when he's young and there are parents towering above him. So Zafar Masud, the mighty banker, still probably looks at wondrous achievement, amazement towards the parents because of their professional standing, their family lineage, their piety and goodness. My question to you is, in addition to this, that had on that fateful day, had there only been one survivor, and had you not been that one survivor, how would have they remembered you?
Yeah, so Nofal, you know, when you are a son of Munawwar Saeed and grandson of Taqi Sahab, irrespective of what you achieve in life, you will remain in awe with these people. You will remain in awe with these people not because they are very well accomplished people in the worldly sense of the word, but because of the fact that they are very, very good human beings. तफज़ुल सामने बैठे हुए मेरे वालिद को बहुत तरह जानते हैं, सलीम अंकल मेरे वालिद को बहुत तरह जानते हैं, खतीजा मेरी वालदा को बहुत तरह जानती हैं, फलाहत बहुत अच्छी तरह जानती हैं. People who know them will vouch for it that they are very, very good human beings. And that is a very tough act to follow. And that is something which is kept me in an awe towards them, not their worldly achievements ever. You talked about my reason for survival. I owe this to my parents, really, because they're genuinely good people, and I think God did not want them to suffer my departure. If I would have gone, they're probably the worst hit of them all. And that's why I think the God has saved me, because they did not want somebody who's so pious, who's so good, to go through this kind of trauma. So that's what I would like to say.
For very personal insight. I appreciate that.
You talked about Lahore, so अगर मुझे आप इजाज़त दे तो मैं एक इसमें चैप्टर्स में से ऑन द रिचुअल्स के चैप्टर में ही है कि किस तरह अपब्रिंगिंग जो थी मेरी, जिसमें जो आप ऑ की बात कर रहे हैं ख़ास तौर से, वो किस तरह मेरे पेरेंट्स की जो अपब्रिंगिंग है उसका इन्फ्लुएंस मुझ पे है, और किस तरह वो, ये शायद सलीम अंकल को ये वाक़या याद भी होगा. आई डोंट नो सलीम अंकल वुड टेल मी अगर उनको ये याद है या नहीं. Yes, it's page Nazi, it's page 149. Back in 1970s and 80s, Malahat would also remember this. When TV sets were still uncommon in most neighborhoods, our household had a bulky TV with an antenna attached to the top. This was both a reflection of my father's engagement in the entertainment industry and a sign of upward social mobility. Back then, when there were only one TV channel we could access, the entire country would tune in to watch the dramas that it broadcast on its terrestrial network. ये पीटीवी पे वो एंटेना के थ्रू आया करता था 8 बजे एवरी डे. अच्छा, ये टीवी जो चैनल, ये जो टीवी है, अच्छा मैं भी आगे आता हूँ उस पर. इन एन एफर्ट टू मेक श्योर that the neighbors did not feel left out, my mother would wheel this TV outside during the dusky evenings, passing its wire through a long extension cord so that passers-by could either hang about on the lawn or lean on the low walls. इतनी थी सुनील, आपको याद होगा, इतनी ऊंची दीवारें हुआ करती थी. Low walls that surrounded our house with their attention riveted by the glamorous stars on TV. अच्छा, ये टीवी जो है ना, ये कलर टीवी है. उस वक्त जो था वो मतू आंटी का टीवी जो था वो, so it was perhaps एक या दो टीवी होंगे पूरे हमारी लेन में जो कलर थे. But my mother made it a point कि उसको आप ड्रैग करके सहन में रख दें ताकि वो लोग जो जा रहे हैं वो भी उसको enjoy कर लें 8 बजे. We also owned one of the few telephones in the neighborhood. Malahat, ये आपका piece है. And I spent a significant portion of my childhood running up and down the street, conveying messages to neighbors from their relatives and friends. No message was too insignificant. No call was too trivial. This was my mother's, conviction. My father had more direct ways of ensuring that his children grew up to be upright citizens. Once in college, I was floored by a friend's confession that he turned on air conditioners in every room in his house during Lahore's scorching summers. We had air conditioners in every room, but the high price of electricity meant that I had to spend my formative years during sharing a bedroom with the family so that we could all benefit from running just one. If my friend could run all the air conditioners in the house, I wanted to know how that was possible. In a conspiratorial whisper, my friend told me that he had made a deal with the lineman of WAPDA. Like most government institutions, WAPDA had the unenviable task of operating on insufficient funds within a cracking bureaucratic structure. So a few leakages here and there were not out of ordinary. ये मैं by the way 50 साल पुरानी कहानी सुना रहा हूँ, ये आज भी ऐसे ही है. My friend had learned how to tinker with the electricity meter outside his house to fix the bill. I was static. When I recounted this scheme to my father, certain that he would share in his enthusiasm and join me in railing against the unfairness of the skyrocketing utility bills thrust upon common people like us, he raised an eyebrow instead. ये आज भी हम यही करते हैं, by the way. I have a better idea, he says. He said with a smirk on his face. This is Munawar Saeed, as you know. Why don't you go and get a gun and rob a bank? Skip these burdensome steps in between. I have never felt such shame for an idea I have pitched before or since.
Thank you, Zafar. In our final phase, just a few questions. Now we want to talk about the event, the crash itself. To set the expectations of those who haven't yet read your book, how much should they expect about the actual details of the crash event in the book, and how much of your narrative about the crash, of the event?
So, Noaf, I have tried to keep the accident to the bare minimum. उसकी जो story है ना, अब you can't avoid this because at the end of the day it has altered my life. It had a deep meaningful impact on my thoughts. So you really can't avoid that. But I try to keep it at a bare minimum. I try to only talk about it where it was absolutely necessary and in a very non-dramatic way, because I did not want to hurt the feelings of the families of the survivors. So I was very conscious that I don't do anything which in any way, hurt them, or digress from the real message in this book, which are the learnings of those 30 seconds to perhaps a fictional story of the sorts. I had a choice, by the way. I could have gone down that route. And people like sensations, people like emotions. But मैंने उसको कोशिश की है कि avoid करूँ.
Do you think we've learned lessons from the crash?
And sadly not at all. Unfortunately, बिल्कुल भी नहीं. And now, मैं तो ये समझता हूँ कि it's a responsibility on each one of us. ये भी जो मेरा project है, this project is also part and parcel of the fact to keep this kind of accident alive, to make people realize that they have to do the right things, that they have to be careful about these things. मैंने Zafar Masud Foundation बनाई है, and I intend to create more awareness about the crash, about the safety, transportation safety. Interestingly enough, jahaz to is the safest of all the transportation. Road is the most vulnerable. So I intend to pursue that as an education process, as advocacy, as an implementation of the laws, and where the laws doesn't exist, perhaps bringing the laws as well.
Zafar, thank you very much, but my request is that of all the chapters in your book, I've been fascinated by your chapter Legacy.
Yes.
So my request is if you could read out a few excerpts just to close out the session before we open for question answers.
Yeah. In fact, मैं तो खुद इसमें से जो था ना ये legacy वाला, इसमें से पढ़ना चाह रहा था ताकि I'll just leave that final thought with everybody. I hope, this is page 201, I hope that even if the experiences I have explained in this book, which when you read you'll come across them, do not seem remotely relevant to you, I can still encourage you to strive towards a better understanding of the legacy you will leave behind. What is it you hope to be remembered for, other than providing for your family and for the nearest and dearest? Which social issue infuriated you? Something that was a struggle for you to watch from afar. Whether it is discrimination based, or gender, or religion, or child abuse, or animal rights issue, or the preservation of art, historical art, there will always be something you can do. Identify and speak up for whatever is important to you. You will most likely know what boils your blood, but like most of us, weighed down by the trials and tribulations of routine, you may not be actively working to remedy it. Start small. Build a neighborhood. Watch the lookout for the children in the area. Or have patient, nuanced conversation about recognizing and correcting biases with the people in your community or protest. Find what you can do within your capacity without worrying about whether it will be enough. Do not wait to be established in your career and life before you begin to think about what your legacy will be. It is easy to be bogged down by life and to forget about the larger picture. Sometimes it is even a little embarrassing to make grandiose plans, or cynicism wants to protect us from seeming pretentious. But I want to encourage everyone, no matter how young and inexperienced they are, to return to the grander schemes they harbored as children, to make a conscious effort to think about what they want to leave behind and to strive to build the legacy. Thank you very much.
So, Ji, depending on the time we have, questions from the audience. जी डॉक्टर साहब आपने ज़रूर एक रेसिटेशन, डॉक्टर साहब को माइक दीजिएगा
प्लीज़ प्लीज़ सर. अच्छा वहीं है.
डॉक्टर अमजद साकिब, चेयरमैन ऑफ बोर्ड ऑफ
मैंने ज़बरदस्ती बात किया.
नहीं नहीं सर, बिल्कुल नहीं सर, प्लेजर एंड ऑनर.
कहना चाहूँगा सबसे पहले तो जनाब ज़फ़र मसूद, कभी देखा है तुझे आलम नौ देखा है, मरहला तय न हुआ तेरी शनासाई का. एक बड़े इल्मी घराने से ताल्लुक़, एक बैंकर, एक प्रोफेशनल और फिर एक अदीब. तो इतनी देते हैं कि ज़िंदगी भी इसके बारे में बहुत तवील बात हो सकती है. मैंने चंद साल पहले मुलाकात का शरफ हुआ तो बहुत ही खुशी का मेहमानी की सर. फिर मैं शेर से ही कहूँगा ये बात कि ज़िंदगी से यही गिलाना मुझे तो बड़ी देर से मिला है. तो आप बहुत देर से हमें मिले. मैं ज़िंदगी में ये नौकल शायद इसको समझें कि CSS का इम्तिहान देना मुश्किल होता है, या MBBS का फाइनल प्रोफेशनल देना मुश्किल होता है, या LUMS का कोई
मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स का.
तो ऐसे ही
डॉक्टर साहब
तो मैंने ये जब किताब पढ़ी तो मुझे ख्वाहिश हुई कि ये तो बहुत बड़ी किताब है, इसका तर्जुमा करना चाहिए. तो मैंने इनसे दरख्वास्त की तो उन्होंने कहा बहुत खुशी की बात होगी. तो लेकिन जब मैंने वो काम शुरू किया तो मुझे एहसास हुआ कि ये बहुत मुश्किल काम है, क्योंकि ये महज एक किताब नहीं है. इसमें एक शख्स की रुद आती है, उसकी सोच, उसकी फिक्र, उसका किरदार, उसकी सीरत, उसके अहल खाना. इसमें फ़लसफ़ा भी है, इसमें तारीख़ भी है, इसमें जदोजहद भी है, इसमें रिज़िलियंस भी है, इसमें होप भी है, ऑप्टिमिज़म भी है, एक नई सूरज की तलाश भी है, एक नई ज़िंदगी की तरफ बढ़ते हुए कदम भी हैं. और फिर इसमें तहकीक है, जुस्तजू है. 170 किताबें पढ़ने के बाद ही चीज़ें लिखी गई हैं. उससे पहले पता नहीं कितनी किताबें और सोच विचार, कितनी रातें इन्होंने इसके लिए बेचैनी के आलम में बिस्तर के साथ टहलते हुए गुजारी होगी. और फिर आमना ने भी इनका जो साथ दिया. तो मुझे ये लगा कि बहुत भारी पत्थर मैंने उठा लिया. तो वो बाहर तो मैं इसलिए चाहता हूँ कि ये, और फिर मैंने जब ये किताब पढ़ी तो कई जगह मुझे लगा कि ये मेरी ही कहानी है. मैं वरना इनसे माजूद कर लेता कि मैं ये नहीं तर्जुमा करूँगा, बट मुझे कई जगह पे लगा कि ये मेरी ही कहानी है, मेरी ही दिल की बात है, मेरी ही खुद नविश्त है और इसको ज़फ़र मसूद से बनाया है. तो इसलिए मैं इसके ऊपर कुछ मेहनत कर रहा हूँ. सिर्फ 2 छोटे छोटे पैराग्राफ्स में आपको पढ़ के सुना देता हूँ. आई एम सॉरी सर, आई एम स्पीकिंग इन उर्दू बिकॉज़ आई एम ट्रांसलेटिंग दिस बुक इनटू उर्दू. तो वो 2-3 इनके तारफ जो है ना पहला चैप्टर उसमें से हैं. और वो बहुत से सवाल जो आप पूछ रहे थे उनके जवाब भी इन्हीं 2-3 चीज़ों में आ सकते हैं. ये दरमियान में से मैं चंद फिक्र पैराग्राफ से. हवाई हादसे या किसी भी हादसे से जिंदा बच जाना आपकी सोच पर ऐसे नकूश छोड़ सकता है जिनका आपने कभी तसव्वुर भी नहीं किया होगा. आप इस अलमियत से खौफज़दा और बेहाल हो जाते हैं और इस हकीकत पर एक अजीब सा सुकून भी महसूस करते हैं कि आप जिंदा हैं. इस मुसर्रत और इत्मीनान के बावजूद आपके जहन में एक सवाल गूंजता है, मैं क्यों बच गया? और जब ये एहसास जहन में अपनी जड़ें गहरी करता है तो ये आपको अंदर से बेचैन और घायल करने लगता है. आप तस्लीम करते हैं कि जो कुछ हुआ वो बेमानी था, या फिर भी आप इस मलबे में बिखरी किसी हकीकत को ढूंढना चाहते हैं. ये सारी कैफियत एक ख़त्म न होने वाली जंग बन जाती है. गम और खुशी, अज़ियत और राहत, मायूसी और जीने की लगन के दरमियान ایک مسلسل کشمکش. ان لوگوں کی طرح جو کسی بھی سنگین حادثے سے نہیں گزرے، میں نے بھی پہلے کبھی نہیں سوچا تھا کہ کسی حادثے کے بعد ذہن میں یہ خیالات طوفانی ہواؤں کی طرح یوں گردش کریں گے. میں نے ان بے چین کرنے والے خیالات کا سامنا کیا تو مجھے بس ایک ہی حل سوچا، اس پر ایک کتاب لکھنے کا، اپنی کشمکش کو صفحہ کرتاس پر بکھیرنے کا. جب میں نے یہ کتاب لکھی تو اس میں نہ صرف حادثے کی تفصیلات کو قلم بند کیا بلکہ اپنے جذبات کی گہرائیوں کو بھی کوریدا اور ان سے سیکھنے کی کوشش کی. میرا جی چاہتا تھا کہ میں یہ سب کچھ دوسروں کو بھی سناؤں. یہ بھی ایک سفر تھا خود شناسی کا، زندگی کے حقائق کو سمجھنے کا، اور میں چاہتا تھا کہ ہر شخص اس سفر میں شریک ہو. یوں یہ کتاب محض ایک حادثے کی کہانی نہیں رہی، اس میں بہت کچھ شامل ہو گیا: جذبے، احساس، حسن تمنا اور خونی جگر. یہ ان باتوں کی عکاسی بھی کرتی ہے جو میں نے اس سانحے کے دوران اور اس کے بعد سیکھی. یہ 10 سبق ہیں. آپ نے 10 کمانڈمنٹس کہا، اب کمانڈمنٹ کا ترجمہ میں نہیں کر سکتا. یہ 10 سبق ہیں، 10 روشنی کے 10 انگار جو میرے دل کو منور کرتے ہیں. شاید یہ اوروں کو بھی روشنی دے دیں، فہم اور تدبر کے کچھ نئے راستے واہ ہونے کے.
بہت
آخری بات جو میں کہہ رہا ہوں کہ وہ 30 سیکنڈ وہ بہت اہم ہے اس پوری کتاب میں. آپ نے پوچھا، آپ نے بتایا کہ آپ نے کیا سوچا، تو جب میں نے وہ 30 سیکنڈ میں پہنچا تو میں نے کتاب بند کر کے ریڈ کی تھی. بہت دیر تک اس 30 سیکنڈ میں خود پساری کر کے سوچتا رہا کہ کیا سوچ رہے ہوں گے یہ مجھ پر یہ کہانی دیتے تو میں کیا سوچوں گا. تو بس میں ایک شعر پہ اختتام کروں گا، وہ بھی اس 30 سیکنڈ کے حوالے سے مجھے یاد آیا کہ میں ایک پل کے رنج فراواں میں کھو گیا.
واہ واہ.
یعنی وہ 30 سیکنڈ ایک پل تھے.
بالکل.
میں ایک پل کے رنج فراواں میں کھو گیا، مرجھا گئے زمانے میرے انتظار میں.
واہ واہ واہ.
Dr. Sakib, it won't be fair for the audience if we will not allow them to have their questions answered by the author himself. So I request the audience to raise your hands and ask few questions. Please, mic legend, please. Ji ja sir.
As it is said by Louis Pasteur, luck favors a trained mind. It was a lucky journey that you are here, and we are grateful to Allah Almighty, and we are proud of you, of your write-up and also this book. I was wandering around that you may think one day to convert this book into a film, into a movie. Thank you very much.
Excellent suggestion. And sir, یہ تھوڑا سوچنا چاہیے اس
ہاں بالکل.
Particularly this.
یہ تو باقی لوگ سوچیں گے، میں تو سوچ چکا جو اس میں.
سر میں پاروں کی تلاش کر رہا ہوں اس مووی کی ہیروئن کے لیے. سر
ہیروئن میں تمہیں لب داں گا، تسی ڈائریکٹر
بنے گی سر پاکستان کی.
ہیروئن میں تمہیں لب داں گا، تسی ڈائریکٹر لب لو. تسی پیسے لب لو اور ہیروئن میں لب داں گا.
سر میرا سوال یہ تھا، ایک تو ڈاکٹر صاحب نے بھی آپ نے 30 سیکنڈز کی بات کی، تو لیٹسٹ ریسرچ یہ کہتی ہے کہ کائنات بھی 30 سیکنڈ میں بنی تھی، اور جو ریلز کا ٹائم ہے جو سارے سوشل میڈیا کے اندر وہ بھی 30 سیکنڈ میں ہی ہے. تو یہ اس کے ساتھ کو ریلیشن ہے یا پتہ نہیں کیا ہے کہ 30 سیکنڈز میں اپنی آپ نے جو بھی ایلیویٹر پچ پوری کرنی ہوتی ہے. سر میرا کوسچن ہے 2 چھوٹے چھوٹے.
یہ میں 30 سیکنڈ پہ ذرا ایک آپ کو شعر سنا دوں. جہان حاصل کن ہے یہ جہان خراب، حاصل کن ہے یہ جہان خراب، یہی ممکن تھا اتنی الجھت میں. اب یہ جس کی سمجھ میں آ گیا اس نے میری گردن کاٹ دینی، جس کو نہیں سمجھ میں آیا وہ چل گیا کام سارا. یہ 30 سیکنڈ سٹوری از ایگزیکٹلی لائک دس. تو یہی ہوتا ہے.
میرا سوال 30 سیکنڈ سے بھی کم ہوگا. سر سوال یہ ہے کہ میں نے سہیل بڑائی سے لیا ہے، آپ خوبصورت بھی ہیں، آپ جوان بھی ہیں، تو پھر آپ نے عشق کیے اور شادی کیوں نہیں کی؟ کیونکہ وہ جو 30 سیکنڈ میں سب سے زیادہ پہلے جو یاد آتا ہے وہ محبوب ہے. وہ کوئی محبوب تھا سر؟ और जो सर्वाइवर गिल्ट है, इससे हम क्या सीख सकते हैं सर? थैंक यू सर.
Sir, at the beginning of your discourse, you alluded to your repugnance towards or your belief in the redundancy of analytical categories and binaries. So, do you see this book as a paradigmatic example of that blend of personal experience and academic research? Like these are not binary opposites, but rather they have a dialectical relation and both enrich each other?
जी पीछे चले जाए अतीक को हाँ जी श्योर.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Sir, two quick questions. First one is, which I agree with, is that as you mentioned, कि एक जो है वो heartbreak के बगैर नहीं हो सकता. So a direct question would that be कि if you hadn't gone through this tragedy, you really think कि इस तरह की epiphany या ये वाली realization या change in life can happen without a tragedy of this scale? It is quite unsettling to think that you have to go through, or anybody would have to go through, a tragedy of this scale to find the realization or find the light that we see in your book. That's number one. And the second one is that because you are one of the two survivors, so there's another person in this world who actually went through the same experience. Have you been in touch and have you, reached out to the other person to see, because you share a bond of sorts with that person. So have you seen how things have changed or how life has changed for that person?
Thank you, sir. Atik sir.
जी मेरे को सवाल है. My first question is to Mr. Nofal Rao. You have interacted with Zafar Saab before the crash and after the crash. So although you mentioned that you had a brief interaction with him before the plane crash, but did you notice any changes in him as a professional? That's the first question.
सही टाइम पे सवाल पूछा तुमने.
Second is to Zafar Masud Saab. Sir, you talked about building a legacy, and I know that you are very concerned about adding value in other people's life. But if you are not able to add value, does this create additional pressure on you? If it does create, how do you cope with that?
Hi Zafar Saab, I think so that you have skipped two beautiful parts of the book. Number one, so I'm just have done a big spotlight on it. Survivor's guilt, I want to listen from you. And number two is the end chapter communication, in which you have told, usually when these type of incidents happens, people don't talk about it. But you took the bold step of like surfacing it to the world. And my question to you is, so you are so passionate about your work. In last those 30 seconds, your work was there or not?
Your
work was there in your mind or not? It was family, it was you said all that. But was it your work there or not?
जी अच्छा जी. पहले तो मुश्किल सवालों का जवाब मैं पहले देता हूँ. पहले तो ये जो एजाज ने पूछा था बड़ा मुश्किल सवाल, वो शादी वाला, वो मैं सिर्फ आपको ये बता दूँ कि बाय द वे ये उनसे भी रिलेटेड है. वो जो सवाल पूछा था ना जुबैर का, जुबैर इज़ द अदर सर्वाइवर. आई एम इन टच विद हिम. और अभी जब कराची में बुक की हुई थी टॉक, तो वो वहाँ पर वो मेरे साथ था और उसने भी अपने रिमार्क्स दिए थे. बट हर किसी की अपने अपने सर्कमस्टांसेस और सिचुएशन होती हैं. कुछ लोग पीपल आर कंफर्टेबल टॉकिंग टू इन पब्लिक, सम पीपल आर नॉट. सो एंड मेरी थोड़ी सी फैमिली बैकग्राउंड भी इस तरह का है कि वी आर कंफर्टेबल इन राइटिंग एंड टॉकिंग. सो आई गेस वो थोड़ा हैंडी आता है. उसके केस में वो थोड़ा शाय ज़्यादा है गालिबन. मेरे क्योंकि पोजीशन ऐसी है, थोड़ी सी प्रोमिनेंट है, तो वो भी बड़ी हैंडी आती है. वो गालिबन अभी, अच्छा वो बच्चा भी है, अभी तो पूरी ज़िंदगी उसकी बाकी, वो 28 साल का है. बट ये एक तो आपका सवाल था, और इससे रिलेटेड जो ये अभी इजाज़ ने पूछा था शादी वाला सवाल, उसका जवाब देने लगा. वो मुझे कहने लगे कि आपका दूसरा सवाल क्या था जो मैं भूल गया. ये एक सवाल मैं लिख पाया. आपका क्या सवाल था पहला उस पर? हाँ ठीक है, बिल्कुल ठीक है. हाँ जी ठीक है. अच्छा ये जो हुआ ये कि उसने मुझे कॉल किया इन एंड नवंबर, अभी लास्ट ईयर. मुझे कहने लगा सर वो 6 दिसंबर को आप कहाँ हैं? मैंने कहा मैं तो चाइना जा रहा हूँ. डॉक्टर साहब नोज. मैंने कहा मैं तो चाइना जा रहा हूँ. कहने लगा ओहो आपने तो मेरी शादी पे आना था 6 दिसंबर को. वो 28 साल का है अभी. मैंने उसको इंस्टिंक्टिवली میں نے اسی وقت اس کو کہا, میں نے کہا یار اگر تو نے شادی کرنی تھی میرے بھائی تو وہیں پر فارغ ہو جاتا, تو نے اب اپنے ہاتھ سے خودکشی, تو نے اب اپنی خودکشی ابھی ضروری کرنی ہے کیا؟ اچھا وہ بچہ, یہ بات بھی سر بڑی ویلڈ ہے. سو وہ بیچارہ بچہ پریشان ہو گیا, اس نے کہا یار یہ کس قسم کی گفتگو میرے ساتھ کر رہے ہیں, 10 دن میں میری شادی ہے, یہ تو کیا لگا سر آپ نہ آئے شادی میں, بڑی مہربانی بڑی مہربانی آپ کی. تو دس از ٹو آنسر یور دس تھنگ. آپ نے نازیہ اور جو آپ نے اجاز سوال پوچھا تھا about survivor's guilt. Now this is there are 10 learnings, but then the gist of those 10 learnings are further 2 learnings which I've captured in the afterwards. Afterward میں نے اس کو کافی الیبریٹ کیا ہے. دوز آر جو اب امجد ثاقب صاحب نے, میرا بڑا فیوریٹ پیج 4 کے اوپر ہے یہ جو امجد صاحب نے اٹھایا ہے ابھی, وہ میں ایکچولی جو الحمرہ میں میری ٹاک تھی فلاحات یو وڈ ریمبر, وہ میں نے یہیں پر ختم کی تھی اسی پیراگراف سے لے کر, اینڈ دین آئی ٹاکڈ اباؤٹ سروائیورز گلٹ اینڈ نو ریگریٹ سنڈروم. سو یہ جو سروائیورز گلٹ ہے یہ ایکچولی سائنس میں ایگزسٹ کرتا ہے ایز اے کانسیپٹ, اینڈ اس سے آپ کو یہ احساس ہونے لگتا ہے کہ یو نو آپ دیر از اے ریزن وائی یو ہیو بین سروائیوڈ اینڈ یو ہیو ٹو او دس ٹو دس ورلڈ. میں نے ذرا تھوڑا سا اس کا ڈفرینٹ ویو لیا, اینڈ اٹ کوڈ ٹینڈ ٹو باگ ڈاؤن یور آل یور ایفرٹس ان یور مائنڈ سیٹ. یو کین گیٹ باگ ڈاؤن ود دس ہول آئیڈیا اینڈ دا کانسیپٹ. میں نے اس کا ڈفرینٹ ایک کانسیپٹ لیا, میں نے اس کو پازیٹیو سینس میں لیا کہ یار یہ تو one has to be very privileged to be in that position. And اس میں ایک چیز ایسی ہے جو میں آپ کو پڑھ کے سنا دیتا ہوں ویری بریفلی, میرے خیال ہے نازیہ اسی کی بات کر رہی ہیں. دس از رائٹ ایٹ دی اینڈ, جو میں نے سروائیورز گلٹ کے بارے میں ایک دفعہ پہلے ہی پڑھ چکا ہوں, میں یہاں پر پڑھ دیتا ہوں. So perhaps it is time to subvert the negative association we have with survivor's guilt. Now, this is the key. If all of us individually see the privileges, wealth or position we have as proof of our survival in an uneven, unjust world, then we should all have some degree of guilt that propels us to make change. So this is what the survivor's guilt is all about as far as I'm concerned. آپ نے بات کی تھی اباؤٹ دا ٹریجڈی کو کے بعد یہ لرننگس کی. میں تو میری تو ہوپ اور وش یہ ہے, اور اسی لیے میں نے ایک کتاب بھی لکھی ہے کہ نو بڈی ایور کمز اکراس دس کائنڈ آف ٹریجڈی. یہ ٹریجڈی ان کے لیے تو تھی جو چلے گئے, اور جو پیچھے رہ گئے ان کے لیے بھی ان مینی ویز سے ٹریجڈی بائی دا وے. اینڈ میں ابھی کسی اور نے بھی سوال پوچھا تھا, میں اس کا بھی جواب آپ کو دے دیتا ہوں کہ یہ جو ہے یہ I have to go through psychotherapy because this is what the need of the hour is. It's not easy. It leaves some very serious repercussions on your mind. So therefore, the idea of this book is کہ کوئی بھی اس قسم کی ایکسپیرینس کو نہ کرے, اور وہ اس کتاب سے کچھ چیزیں شاید اٹھا لے ایسی which will be helpful in their own life and setting their priorities right. So that is the thing here. Binary and research بڑا مشکل سا سوال پوچھا ہے یار, تم پی ایچ ڈی کے اسٹوڈنٹ تو نہیں ہو. So look, the point is that if I have understood your question correct, basically all I'm saying is that everything is interrelated. There are no two relationships between two different things and then silos, two different things and then in one different thing in a silo. They're all interconnected with one another. And if you realize that particular philosophy in mind, then it's a completely different ball game. Why? Because you'll be thinking in a broader sense for the inclusive society rather than thinking about binary relationships. Your relationship with your LUMS is not a relationship of you and LUMS alone. It is a much larger relationship, and this is what I've tried to explain to you in the first thing that Noaf asked the question about. Building legacy, مجھے ابھی اس کا صحیح یاد نہیں آ رہا ہے کس نے سوال پوچھا تھا جی. ہاں اٹ لیوز, ہاں وہ میں ایکچولی, ہاں میں اس سے کریکٹ کرنا چاہ رہا تھا, میں وہ صحیح طرح یہاں نہیں نوٹس کر سکا. سو اٹ لیوز اے لاٹ آف رسپانسبلٹی آن یو اینڈ پریشر. اگر آپ نہیں کر سکتے ہیں تو یو ہیو ٹو گو تھرو اے سائیکو تھراپی انالیسس. اٹ از اے ویری ڈیفیکلٹ سچویشن ٹو بی ان. میں بالکل آپ سے اگری کرتا ہوں, یہ بڑی مشکل چیز ہے, یہ آسان چیز نہیں ہے. اینڈ یہ اس سے نکلنا جو ہے وہ بھی آسان نہیں ہے. اونلی یور لوڈ ونس کین ٹیک یو آؤٹ آف دس ہول سچویشن. یہ ادروائز یہ پورا ایکو سسٹم سپورٹ کرتا ہے, اس طرح میں نے کہا. بٹ ٹرسٹ می, ان مائی کیس دا لوڈ ونس ہیز سیوڈ دا ڈے فار می. سیٹ 1C اولڈ ظفر, زیادہ تر میری جو لرننگس ہیں بائی دا وے وہ ری انفورسمنٹ ہے آف مائی ارلیئر لرننگس بفور دا کریش. آفٹر دا کریش وہ ساری ری انفورس ضرور ہو گئی ہے. سو پرابیبلی میں اس وقت بھی اپنے آپ کو یہی ایڈوائس دیتا جو میں آج دے رہا ہوں, مگر اس وقت شاید آپ لوگ نہیں سن رہے ہوتے یہ ایڈوائس, کیونکہ میں اس وقت کریش سے نہیں نکلا تھا. اب آپ لوگ ضرور سن رہے ہیں, اور میری ڈیوٹی ہے کہ میں آپ لوگوں کو یہ سناؤں ان دا گارب آف دیٹ کریش. دوز لرننگز ور اسٹل دیئر. Dealing with people it's merely with empathy. There is nothing more, nothing less. You need to understand other people's position, where they are coming from, and empathize with them. Be grateful that people are looking up to you. Be thankful to your Almighty Allah that they have put you in this position where people are looking up to you and expecting something. But again, ایک چیپٹر پورا اس پہ سنسیریٹی کا ہے, آپ دیکھیے گا وہ سنسیریٹی کا چیپٹر ہے ہی یہی. یو ہیو ٹو بی سنسیئر ٹو یور سیلف, جو میں نے اس کتاب میں کیپچر کی ہے کوشش کرنے کی. اور میں آپ لوگوں کو اندازہ ہوگا کہ میں نے کوئی چیز چھپائی وپائی نہیں ہے. میں آئی کم فرام اے ویری لوور مڈل کلاس بیک گراؤنڈ, اینڈ میں جیسا میں ہوں, میں آج سائیکو تھراپی کروا رہا ہوں, مجھے کوئی پرابلم نہیں ہے, میں ایکسیپٹ کر رہا ہوں. تو دس از دا وے اٹ سپوز ٹو بی. اپنی اسکن میں سیٹل ہونا بڑا ضروری ہے. سو سنسیئر ود یور سیلف اینڈ سنسیئر ود دا پیپل ہو آر کمنگ ان کانٹیکٹ ود یو. یو ہیو ٹو بی. اچھا, ایٹ ٹائمز وہ سنسیئرٹی میں نا لوگ تھوڑا سا اس کو مسکنسٹرو بھی کر جاتے ہیں. آپ کی زیادہ بلنٹنس کو بھی پسند نہیں کرتے, اور آپ کی زیادہ سافٹنس کو بھی جو ہے نا وہ مسکنسٹرو کر جاتے ہیں. بٹ دین اٹس اپ ٹو یو ٹو میک دیم ریئلائز دیٹ ویئر یو ور کمنگ فرام. اینڈ لاسٹ ون, somebody talked about the communication, the 30 second, what is the نازیہ آپ نے کہا تھا اس پہ جی.
Number one, communication.
And?
Like, was your work?
Yeah.
30 سیکنڈ میں آپ نے اپنے کام کے بارے میں کچھ سوچا؟
نہیں, کچھ بھی نہیں.
See, that's what I want.
کام زیرو, صرف ایک, nothing.
کوئی بینک یاد نہیں آیا.
No, zero. کوئی بینک یاد نہیں آیا. ہاں, اگر کوئی یاد آیا تو ایک تو بہت ٹائم کم تھا اپنے کالیگس کے ساتھ, تو یہ ضرور یاد آتے. یہ سی ایف او ہے ہمارے سر, یا یہ یاد نہیں آئیں گے تو کون آئے گا. یہ یاد آتے, اعجاز صاحب یاد آتے, نوفل یاد آتے, مگر کام کوئی یاد نہیں آیا. یہ کوئی یاد نہیں آیا کہ کیا پوزیشن چلی جائے گی اور کیا. لیسٹ bothered about it. And by the way, people who saved me, they didn't know who they were saving. And if in any way I can help them at all, یہ جو میں نے goodness of people میں پورا اسی کو elaborate کیا ہے, they didn't know. ویسے by the way میرے ساتھ تو مجھے تو بچانے کا ان کو ویسے بھی کوئی فائدہ نہیں, میں نے کسی کا کام ویسے نہیں کرتا, لیکن at that time they didn't know, and that shows the goodness of those people. اپنی جان جوکھوں میں ڈال کے وہ گئے تھے, because right after my rescue, Ben, that car that I fell on went into flames. If they wouldn't have saved me for a few seconds, I would have probably met the same fate as the others. So they actually took a chance on their own lives in saving me from there. There are 6 of them. Can you imagine the goodness of those people? And we tend to forget all these things. میں خود بھی بھول گیا تھا. اب یہ کتاب روز روز پڑھنی پڑتی ہے تو مجھے بار بار خیال آتا ہے, شاید صاحب جس طرح آپ کہہ رہے تھے, کہ یار یو ہیو ٹو بی مائنڈفل آف دوز تھنگز اینڈ پرائرٹیز ان لائف.
Master class of leadership, resilience and humility. And to offer note of thanks, I request Shahid Hussain Sahab, Director LUMS, to please say a few words and thank the author on behalf of the university.
colleagues from LUMS and all the guests here. Zafar Masud sahab, thank you very much. The Alumni Association did their role, but I'm very grateful that you agreed to come to LUMS and deliver this talk, not only highlighting your personal challenges, but also helping all of us to understand the larger things in life. We were very grateful. We all enjoyed it. You can see the house is full. I was talking to the Vice Chancellor that he should have probably chosen a larger place, but he said it's all because of the alumni. Thank you once again. It's always a pleasure to see you and to learn.